Hello, second graders. It is time for our read aloud and knowledge lesson. Hey, I'm trying to do a week at a time for some of us and making a few mistakes. At the very end of our packet that I sent home, right, we have the handwriting page. Before the handwriting, this ended up in here. Cells, tissue, organ systems. We haven't got there yet. That will be with our Friday reading. So you can tear that out or don't complete that sheet. I will maybe send that home on Monday of next week. So I make mistakes too. Not the first one I've made. All right. So go ahead and tear these out. It's the one that looks like this. Cells, tissue, organ systems. On the bottom it says 132. You can get rid of that sheet. 133, the continuation. Get rid of that sheet for now. So don't do that today with our read aloud, even though it's with our read aloud stuff. So going back to our read aloud from yesterday. Yesterday we talked about the 5 senses. What were the 5 senses? Can you name a few of them? Could you name all 5? Think about it. I'm going to count down. I'd play Jeopardy music if I could here. What are the 5? Right? Sight, smell, taste, sound, and touch, feel. Okay? And today, our words are on the board there. The first word, bacteria. Okay, bacteria are very small living things not visible with the naked eye, some which may cause disease. So make sure you wash your hands with soap and water to kill any bacteria you might have in your hands so you don't get sick. And also with the coronavirus, COVID-19, make sure you're washing your hands for that too. That is a virus, which is different than a bacteria. Next, starts with an L-E-N-S, lens. Something you look through, right? If you wear glasses, you have lenses, and they magnify things so you can see them. So a curved piece of glass, usually, okay? Magnifies, I just used that word. What does the word magnifies mean? To get bigger, magnifies. Something that appears larger than it is. And one way we can do that is with a, starts with an M, microscope. Microscope, which might look like this. And if we're looking through a microscope, we might be making observations. So you're looking at something, you're paying attention to details of those things, you're making observations. So those are words that we're going to be using today. And as we do our read aloud today, I have a couple pictures of something called microscopes. And you can color in whatever color you want. I've seen black ones, gray ones, blue ones, red, pink if you want to, green, do whatever color you want. So we're going to read about microscopes. So I'm going to move us over here to where we always do the read aloud. All right. We'll get rocking on the read aloud. Nope, I got to go back about 8 or 9 pages here. A few more. Few more. Uh-oh, you saw a blue microscope. And we will begin. So in our first reading, I talked a little bit about Anton van Leeuwenhoek, and today we're going to read about him. If you recall, we mentioned him yesterday. Hi, boys and girls. I might need these. because there's a lens and it magnifies, similar to a microscope, but not quite. Hi, boys and girls. Last time we were together, I said I would tell you about Anton van Leeuwenhoek. Today, I do plan to do that, but first I want to tell you a story about me, about him. He's telling the story. When I was about your age, one day my father came home with a present for me under his arm. When I first opened it, I wasn't sure what it was. One of these big blue things. It looked like this. Do you know what this is? My father explained that it was a microscope. That was nothing I had ever dreamed about wanting. I spent most of my time playing outside and could barely sit still long enough to read a book. Why would I want this funny-looking instrument? Now, what is a microscope? It's a type of scientific equipment that uses pieces of curved glass, lenses, to make very small things look bigger. You're so curious about everything, I thought. Perhaps you'd like to see what a butterfly wing looks like close up, my father said. A butterfly wing? Whoa! I peered through the lens, or curved piece of magnifying glass, of the microscope and saw the tiny veins and hairs of a butterfly's wing. I looked at insect eyes and blades of grass. I looked at oak leaves and dead bumblebees and toy soldiers. It was the best present I had ever received. Have you ever used a magnifying glass? If you were here, we would probably do some stuff with magnifying glasses. Can you tell me what it's used for? It magnifies objects. It makes objects look hundreds of times larger than they really are. It shows things that are too small to see with the human eye alone. Sometimes people use magnifying glasses to read really small print or to find splinters buried deep in the skin. Well, a microscope is a lot like that, but much more powerful. So what does it have to do with Anton van Leeuwenhoek? Well, just like me at 7 years old, the year I received my first microscope, Anton was very curious. He also had a fascination with magnifying objects. Although Anton was not a scientist, his work with microscopes changed the way people thought about the human body and how it works. Now, at 16, Anton began working in the textile or cloth business. His shop sold cloth, buttons, sewing supplies, ribbons, and lace. His customers were very particular, expecting the very best textiles or cloth for their suits and dresses. Anton used a magnifying glass, one of these, to make sure the threads of the cloth were straight and tightly woven. His customers appreciated Anton's careful observations. So he's got this on this piece of, looks like a piece of fabric, and it's a little bit different color, but if you move it back, it would get bigger. Okay. When he was about 30 years old, Anton took a trip from his home in Holland to nearby England. There, he discovered a book called Micrographia, meaning small images. Micrographia. I wonder if this is a page from that book. This is that book. Micrographia. Written by Robert Hooke, the book was full of drawings and descriptions of objects seen through a microscope. Anton was fascinated by how large and detailed the micro or small objects look when seen through the lenses of a microscope. It was a little like someone with poor eyesight putting eyeglass lenses for the first time and discovering that the blurry tree in the distance was actually made up of individual leaves. He couldn't wait to get home and experiment with his own objects. So he didn't invent the microscope, but he kind of created his own. Upon his return to Holland, Anton began to build his own single lens microscopes, or a type of microscope with just one lens, single lens. Okay? He shaped his lenses very carefully, grinding them down with sand and polishing them smooth with putty, or like a polishing powder. Anton's simple microscopes magnified objects from 50 to 200 times their natural size. Anton had been interested in science and nature ever since he was a boy, and now he had the opportunity to study nature at a much closer range. He carried squiggly, worm-like insect larvae around in his pocket, eager to watch the entire life cycles of insects with the aid of a microscope. Remember we talked about life cycles? He wanted to see it under a microscope. Using the microscopes he made himself, he studied people's skin, mosquito wings, and sheep hairs. He observed duck hearts, fish scales, cow eyes, and water bugs. What a strange man, others thought, but this patient man was driven by his curiosity, and he wanted to learn more. He never lost interest in the scales on a gnat's wings, or the hairs on a fly. He looked at the same things again and again, comparing, measuring, and recording his findings. So that looks like it might be a fly, or even a gnat. Looks more like a fly. Anton conducted many experiments with water. Drinking water from his well, water from lakes and from the sea, and melted snow. He discovered what looked like, to him, tiny little animals in lake water. He called these little animals animalcules. Anton claimed he saw even more animalcules swimming about in rainwater. They were everywhere, he said. He estimated, or guessed, that 1,000 of these tiny creatures could fit on the head of a pin. So a pin is something you use for sewing. It's pointy, all right? People called him a liar and a magician, thinking him quite mad or crazy. But in fact, he was not mad at all. His little animals were not really animals, but they were definitely alive. He was the first to observe and describe many tiny living things in nature not visible to the naked eye, including bacteria or germs. In other words, bacteria cannot be seen with the naked eye. Many scientists believe that these tiny little life forms have been on Earth for more than 3 billion years. They surround us in air, water, and on land, but no one was aware of their existence before Anton recorded what he saw. He discovered a whole new world. What do you see in this picture? See a girl smiling. Her mouth is open. What do you see? Her teeth? Ever curious, Anton began studying the saliva from inside his mouth. He discovered even more bacteria. He found that the sticky coating on the outside of his teeth was crawling with millions of tiny organisms or living things. You have them too. But don't worry, they won't hurt you. We'll learn more about them another day. But don't forget to brush your teeth at night to clean them off. Anton kept a journal to record his detailed observations. He made friends with 2 English doctors who belonged to England's Royal Society of London. They told him that their fellow English scientists kept similar journals to share their scientific discoveries, and they invited Anton to share his work with them. So for the next 50 years, Anton sent hundreds of letters to England. His letters described in great detail the tiny structures that he saw through his homemade microscopes. He described fungus on stale bread, the stingers, eyes, and mouths of bees, even tiny lice. Ooh. Because he could not draw well, Anton hired someone to illustrate his writing. The English society loved everything he sent and published his letters for others to read. Anton van Leeuwenhoek did not invent the microscope, so he did not invent it, nor was he the first to use one. But he used his own simple microscope more than most people of his day. Compared to modern microscope, Anton's was very simple indeed. It was even more simple than other microscopes used in his day. The entire instrument was only 3 to 4 inches long and had to be held up close to the eye. So this was kind of his microscope. Anton's microscope used only one lens. Modern microscopes have 2 or more lenses, one in the eyepiece that you look through and at least one at the bottom of the tube or barrel to enlarge things even more. Today, objects are put on glass slides to be viewed. These objects remain in one place. It is the lens that moves, not the objects. Instead of keeping the insects in one place, Anton mounted his objects on the end of a sharp pointed pin sticking up in front of the lens that moved the objects instead of the lens. And he moved the objects instead of the lens. Okay. Anton's invention required good lighting and great patience to use. His lenses were the clearest and most powerful lenses of his day, but he never shared his secret for creating them. No one came close to matching the quality of Anton van Leeuwenhoek's microscope for more than 100 years after his death, because he kept it a secret. Of the 400 to 500 microscopes that Anton is believed to have made, no more than 9 exist today. Anton is one of my heroes, one of his heroes. One of my heroes because he was the first person to describe bacteria, tiny living things not visible to the naked eye, and his discovery of bacteria made it possible to see other small living things, such as small building blocks of all life on Earth. As a nutritionist, I am fascinated by the human body works and the tiny building blocks that make up the human body. The next time we meet, I look forward to teaching you about the amazing body's amazing building blocks. Okay, so in our read aloud, what instrument made Anton's discovery possible? What did he use? A microscope, right? He used a microscope and then he created his own. Now he didn't invent them, but he created some of his own. Now, in some of our other works from yesterday, we had to find nouns and adjectives. So remember, an adjective is a describing word. So what adjectives might you use to describe Anton? What do you think? I bet he's smart, patient, observant, curious. So Anton lived a long time ago. So how do we know so much about his discoveries? Do you guys remember what he did? When he observed something, he wrote them down, or he kept a journal. He had somebody write down his things, right? So he kept a journal of everything he did. So that's why we have so much information on him. So we have Nick Nutri here. He's a nutritionist, and he says that Anton van Leeuwenhoek was one of his heroes. Why would he be a good hero for him? Maybe because he has to know, Nick Nutri needs to know what you put in your body, what food has in it. Sometimes you need to look at a microscope to see, certain things. That's my guess. So you may have been doing that, coloring the microscope. So on this page, please write about. Give me 2 sentences about Anton van Leeuwenhoek. If you don't know how to spell it, his name is right here. Okay? Give me 2 sentences. They begin with and end with. Sentences do. Okay? Tell me about some of his personality traits. Was he smart? Was he observant, curious, brave maybe even? Okay? So give me some sentences about that. How old was he when he got his first microscope? I don't know if we said that. And here, put an X beside a statement that describes his contribution to the world. So what did he do? Did he write the book called Micrographia? I don't think he did. Remember, that's the book he read. Did he invent the microscope? Well, you're going to have to pick one of the other ones. Put an X next to his name. Okay, that would be it for today. The other 2 sheets that are attached, you do not need to complete. I'm going to save those for Monday of next week because we're going to read about tissue, cells, tissue, organs, and organ systems and organisms and that sort of thing. And that comes later this week. So I'm not sure how I got that in this packet. So anyway, that's it for our read aloud. We're going to do handwriting next. Hope you're all doing well. I miss you guys. Wash your hands. Stay safe. If you ride your bike, I know it's really cold outside. You're probably not riding a bike, but wear a helmet when you do. So hope you're all well. Miss you.